take a bit of time to get on to everyone's favourite friends, Ubisoft. Because, let's be honest, they've brought us some pretty controversial titles, but they have also brought us some good ones. And for what it's worth, I felt it was a very mixed bag here. I thought there's some stuff to be actually really, potentially still tentatively excited about, I'd say is the best way to go into. You can't really go into an Ubisoft conference without bringing at least a kilo or two of salt with you to take it with. I mean, we've seen what's happened before with Watch Dogs, with Siege, with The Division. So there's a lot that could turn out differently to how it appears now. But one of their kind of opening ones, after the kind of crazy Just Dance 27, kind of almost like
the dancing giraffe of love.
Yeah, almost like a kind of a tribute to the British Olympic opening ceremony, tied up with a bit of Freddie Mercury. God knows what that was. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, you start a conference with Queen. That's always a good time.
Yeah, I mean, Sony went for a live orchestra. They went for a giraffe man jumping around to a kick-ass song,
and a man with a flower guitar.
They're trying so hard.
But as we got on, actually, and again, Aisha Tyler gets a lot of flack for these things sometimes. I thought she did great.
I like it.
I love Aisha Tyler.
I thought she did absolutely great in terms of holding this conference together. She was wicked, really, really good energy. Then we moved on to their first kind of, I guess, flagship game, which was Ghost Recon Wildlands, which we'd seen a little bit of before, but now we were getting another piece of, kind of semi-scripted gameplay. But again, a lot could change, a lot could go tits up for it when it comes out in the release. So I'm trying not to get caught up in hype, but I'm actually potentially really looking forward to Wildlands, because the thing that does it for me with Wildlands is that there are a lot of things I really liked about the Far Cry co-op, and being able to explore that kind of massive open world and stuff with a friend and just get up to complete madness is awesome. The biggest kind of thing that I was a bit upset about was the fact that you couldn't actually do any of the main storyline missions. You were stuck to kind of all the sideline stuff, which was a shame. But at the same time, on The Division when it came out, the thing that really was jarring, obviously, was that they've crafted an incredible atmospheric world. There's a ton to explore there, and many things actually about The Division which are great. Technical hitches aside, and bullet spongy enemies aside, whatever we want to talk about, the shame was kind of the lack of kind of depth, and it felt maybe a bit like it became very much a loot-based shooter, and for a lot of people that was great. So for me, Wildlands represents almost a return to form in that it's kind of everything that I might have hoped The Division was going to be, in so much as it's not based on kind of stat building and loot-based combat. It's more real-world shooting. And yes, there were points where it felt like it could have been like the stealth combat. You kind of walked into a room and was able to just kind of gun down people without them really reacting to him very well in the trailer. In the gameplay footage they showed us, felt a bit almost like GTA sort of vibe. But I don't know, I personally really like what we saw. I'm quite excited for it. I think like the way that they give you these missions that you can approach in like a huge variety of ways, and that can pan out differently. Like the concept to me gave me very much a kind of the way you'd approach a mission in Metal Gear Solid 5. The way you can kind of, you can come from any direction, you can sneak in, you can go loud, you can call in help. Except here you're potentially doing it, with a bunch of other people in co-op. And that's a really exciting idea if they can make it happen.
I think that just about sums up what I've seen and what I've heard is, people referring to it as sort of a co-op Metal Gear Solid 5.
I don't know, for some reason this game isn't really pushing any buttons for me at the moment. I'm trying to put a finger on why, but it's because I think it's just Ubisoft has, when it comes to their open world games, at least they have a certain style which doesn't gel with me, and that game seems to fall into that. It just feels like some of those elements, if you take them out of context, they do look kind of cool, but it's nothing I've not seen before, so for some reason I think that's why the game isn't impressing me.
I think it's definitely understandable.
Yeah.
Will there be radio towers?
Oh god, if they make us climb radio towers, and then all the best thing about those towers is that, I mean, we saw it again actually, not in a non-Ubi, but just in the new Homefront, for example. Yet again, another game that decided to just build on that ethos, and I always just love the fact that you've got this area which is impenetrable, and you're almost punished for even trying to stray into that area. And then the moment you just go and flick a switch on the radio tower, the enemies just kind of go, I guess we're done here. And just up sticks and leave. Thinking, it's not like our friends have driven them out. If they were capable of that, they would have done it a long time ago.
Yeah. Not to jump ahead, but someone from Ubisoft apparently did say that Watch Dogs 2 won't require you to hack towers to unlock the map.
Yes!
Whether that means you'll have to hack towers to unlock the missions or something,
God knows.
who knows? But maybe they're not just doing. I mean, I actually quite like that formula, but it is in everything, and maybe they should not put it in everything.
Well,
all
rolling
the
back to
time.
Bethesda, we saw they talked about this whole one Tamriel thing, and as well of trying to do there where they were doing kind of leveling across to try and make it so that again you didn't have to wait till you were level 20 to get to this section of the map, and they're trying to, I guess, make it easier for people to play with their friends again. So yeah, maybe that's something that Ubi have picked up on a bit, because I'd say actually when one of the worst games for that, pointing the finger back at Ubi, is The Division. For so many games that have put in level scaling on a really simple basis, even just making it so that your character, you either level to the highest or lowest level of anyone in the party. The Division I found so jarring for that, because The Division is a bit lacking in substance in my view, but I say in my view to caveat that, but I'm sure there's plenty of people agreeing. But actually does feel pretty cool when you're doing it with friends. The thing that was really upsetting in a way was that I didn't get much time to put in playtime with The Division when it first came out, and a number of my friends did, and were instantly kind of maxed out, high spec, whatever level they want to be. And then when we tried to play together, they have a great leveling system whereby your character's levels stay exactly as they are, but the enemies all scale to I think 2 or 3 levels below the highest level in the party. So if you're level 5 and you play with a level 20, have fun, because one stray bullet comes over a piece of chest high wall and you're down. So you spend the entire mission basically carrying behind a wall, just pressing the heal button, waiting for your friend to clear off the entire, and there was only there's a limit to how many nights I could do that. So I think I made it to about level 13 and then was like, I'm just going to have to start playing this alone, and because otherwise I'm never going to have any fun.
It's a fantastically clunky system.
Yeah, hopefully they've picked up on that. Because because they're still expanding on The Division. They've said it's a long-term commitment. They featured on the Underground and the Survival DLCs, which were quite nice little previews. The Survival one in particular, I think, is interesting because it hints at there being whole fresh kind of gameplay mechanics with the blizzard and actual kind of food and survival, but obviously what we got was more of a cinematic, so I'm not really sure how much we really know about how that's going to play out in the final release.
Yeah, and then they've got their randomly generated dungeons as well, which is the underground thing.
Underground.
Which is fine, but I don't feel like a lack of level design was necessarily the issue with The Division.
I think it sums it up to me that The Division was one of my most hyped games, and again, I'd done it reluctantly, being Ubi, until I got my hands on it at EGX that first year, and it was just something about it. It was the bullet sponginess, I think, that for some reason works with a lot of RPGs, but putting it into the context of a shooter, it instantly broke my immersion, because I was having to empty 3 whole magazines into a guy wearing a hoodie with a baseball bat. And it kind of just... Yeah,
there's a fantastic dissonance.
Yeah, exactly. And I found that massively jarring. So, it became a kind of suddenly, oh great, it's now a kind of a grinding loot crawler instead of a team-based, kind of one of the most atmospheric shooters, that I've ever played. Because the world itself feels phenomenal.
Yeah, that's credit where credit's due. So Ubisoft's art team is always so good at building worlds.
Yeah, and that's where I hold out hope for Wildlands. I mean... Again, the other one that hyped me up massively before was Rainbow Six Siege, which, again, there I was kind of almost hoping for a spiritual successor to SWAT 4, which, thanks to the kind of dissolution of Sierra, never really came to light. And it wasn't that, but actually, credit to it, Rainbow Six Siege is a really, really fun game, and I'm still putting in hours to that at the moment.
And doing really well.
Yeah, it's still got a really solid player base.
Yeah, so we've seen that, yes, things don't always turn out the same way the hype has suggested they might, but it can still sometimes result in some really awesome games. So I'm hoping that Wildlands is one of those. They also showed us a complete change in tone, but one we were all expecting, which is South Park.
Yes.
Yes.
Can we talk about the introduction to South Park?
Yes, their hashtag generic trailer.
The super generic, the super generic Ubisoft trailer that basically, now you've shown this, all of your other trailers for the rest of the press conference are going to look ridiculous.
I know, it was brilliant. I loved it.
Trey Parker and Matt Stone are fantastic. I mean, South Park's one of those great franchises where, unlike most which tend to kind of go stale with age, it's one of the few that seems to get better and more topical and more witty. And we've seen it from the likes of the Book of Mormon and stuff. They, that they can really make whatever they apply themselves to work. And the Stick of Truth was, in its art style alone, it brought to life the South Park world in a way that I don't think anyone expected it was going to do it so accurately.
It was the first game where actually like made you properly feel like you were playing a South Park game.
Yeah.
Like you're actually in the South Park world. And the game's properly funny as well. I love the way one thing I noticed like straight off the bat was the way it actually uses mechanics to tell jokes. Like if you're going to sit somewhere, like Cartman's always like riffing on you and stuff.
Yeah, and we saw that with this teaser where he's like, he walked out of his room and he goes and starts playing the piano. He's like, he walked out of his room. And it's also really interesting stuff like how they, I mean, Trey and Matt talks about it the first time they were hinting on Stick of Truth, where for the first time they were having to suddenly go, wait a minute, we're not just doing exposition scenes here. You can now explore the whole town. We have to work out where each of the buildings is, and actually lay out South Park for the first time, which is really cool.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I love how, by the looks of things, they made the actual combat have a little bit more depth as well.
Exactly.
So that's one of the complaints with the first one was, as an actual gameplay mechanics was a bit simple.
Yeah, it was.
So to have it as it's more tactics based. So it's like obviously there's a lot more movement involved, which I'm definitely down for.
Yeah, and the whole reframing now of especially in the context of how much the DC and MCUs have become just a massive part of kind of of film media. It was really nice to see them riffing off that as well with the whole
superhero angle,
fractured but whole the Civil War style angle, and literally getting right into the politics of it in terms of kind of planning out the release schedule. So that was really, really cool. And yeah, I think suffice to say, it sounds like all of us are pretty excited for how that's going to go.
With the first game, every level, like every bit of the story mission that you would play through, you kept thinking, okay, they can't possibly get more outrageous than this. And then in the next part, they do.
Then the aliens.
And it just keeps escalating until the end of the game. I cannot wait to see how that translates into the next game. As soon as I even heard sequel to Stick of Truth, I'm in.
Yeah, me personally as well, I prefer like the whole superhero thing that they're doing more now. Like I always thought that storyline in South Park was more interesting to me.
I mean, Mysterio, the whole Kenny Mysterion thing was great from the start.
Yeah.
So yeah, they then moved on to again something a little less typical Ubi with that kind of VR experience of Eagle Flight, which looked pretty cool as well. We got a little bit of gameplay on there. Again, it was one that looked quite conventionally the VR look and feel, so, I guess, but quite a fun little game. Be interesting to see how they flesh it out.
Yeah, when they announced that, I guess, hey, it's Assassin's Creed Eagle Flight, and it just sounded like, okay, you're just going to fly around and look at the cities, and then no, it's like a 3-on-3 sports game. It's like Hawk football or something, or Eagle football.
Like Capture the Rabbit.
It's really interesting. Someone compared it to Quidditch, which is kind of interesting. Now I want a Quidditch game.
You've got to admit, I mean, that is not something that I was expecting to see.
No, and the same goes on that VR note to Star Trek Bridge Crew, which we were touching on before, which again, it did feel a little bit to me that it would have been nice if they could have just upped the visual fidelity a little bit more. Like, so you literally felt like you were on the set. But outside of that, it still looked really cool.
It's Star Trek in VR, so
yeah.
That's enough to make me go.
For any of you who have played like things like the games I was mentioning earlier, so Don't Talk Nobody, and Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, and Artemis,
Space Team,
yeah, or like Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time. These sorts of games where it's like literally, a group of people just collaborating on one single goal rather than just doing, rather than kind of running around in an environment. You're in a shared kind of cockpit style area. It's just, I think it's got a recipe to be tons of fun if the kind of rest of the game around it has enough substance.
What I'm hoping is that they will take the obvious route and have expansions with different bridges from different Star Treks.
Yeah.
Because if they get...
Because there's a hell of a lot of fans out there you can appease.
If they get, like, the ops deck of DS9 or the Bridge of the Defiant, I am so in on that one.
And then combine that with what could effectively turn into almost fleshed out campaigns and, like, straying into whole areas of different space, the Klingons, etc., and actually trying to explore whole depths of the galaxy, which is the whole point, Enterprise to boldly go when no man has gone before. It's, if they can really flesh that out, then they've got a really great little something that could turn from being almost a gimmick to being a really cool fleshed out game that could have a massive lifetime to it.
I think LeVar Burton could sell me on almost anything with that enthusiasm. He was a real joy.
I think seeing Ace Tyler pretty much saying what everyone was thinking, it's just like, I love it. He's just like, should we just get a room?
But you don't have to take his word for it. Da-da-da.
Staying on the indie route, we say indies now, Trials is now huge, but On departures from the normal Ubi standard, then, should we say, Trials of the Blood Dragon. I mean, after seeing what they did with Far Cry Blood Dragon, like, I mean, God, it was as out there as Kung Fury. Like, it was just so over the top, so much fun. I've never been a massive guy for the Trials games, but this made me want to be.
I agree completely. I mean, I'm probably not going to play it because I don't really have much interest in Trials. But I'm glad it's being made because it looks bonkers.
Yeah, and even just from the way it was sold in from the start, where they opened with like an 80s kids like toy advert and blended it in, I was just like, they're so on point. They know their audience so well. And it was just looks so much fun. Sergeant Rex Power Colt.
And seeing the Blood Dragon team there in the crowd.
Yeah, the guys sitting in the crowd with their like Hawaiian shirts, their sunglasses. God knows if they could even see anything on the screen. I mean, it was great. I was partway through the Microsoft conference. I think I saw there was just a guy sitting in Kanye glasses, and he wasn't even with a marketing team. And I was just like, is he really seeing any of this? Is he just here hoping the cameras will catch him and think, that guy, what a man?
I tell you what, EA was the worst. They kept cutting to the crowd in EA, and they were so bored. And just don't cut to the crowd.
Oh God, there was one bloke who was genuinely asleep. I was really worried. I mean, I've never heard so little applause in a conference before. I feel bad for EA. They've got so many.
I don't. They should just make conferences that aren't
They've
boring.
got so many. No, but I mean in terms of the execution, they've got so many great titles under their belt.
Yes.
That they
exactly.
I wish it had been more. Let's not roll back too far. So yeah, that looked great. Then one that again has some mixed feelings risen in me is For Honor. What do you guys think?
I think that looks really cool.
I was really glad that guy came back because I really like him.
I think he wins the title of the coolest looking video game developer ever.
Oh yes, there with strolling around the stage with a cane.
Yes.
I love that he flip-flops between his like dramatic voice and just a normal voice.
Yeah.
I think between all of the things that Ubisoft's shown, well, apart from South Park, obviously, For Honor's probably the one that interests me the most. I like the way the combat looks. It seems to be, compared to a lot of games in that kind of theme that are coming out these days, this one seems to be as grounded as possible. And also, by the looks of the combat, I like how it seems to be pretty slow.
Yeah.
Almost to a certain degree Souls-like. And then when you actually do like the boss fights and stuff, it seems to have quite a lot of depth. Just from the gameplay trailer, it's hard to say until I actually get that game on my hands, but I don't know.
I can see that, like you said, that the pace of the combat, especially for someone like you who's a big Souls fan, I think that is really cool. But bear with me, I guess the thing that I felt slightly less hyped about it than when I saw we saw a tiny amount of it last time, and that actually made me like, ooh, this could be really, really cool. I mean, I'm a big fan of like Mount and Blade and Chivalry and these sorts of games, and they focused a bit more on kind of the multiplayer last time, and that was quite exciting. The thing that I found slightly, it put up alarm bells for me this time was actually when they showed the gameplay. I was hoping almost for this kind of realistic damage style feel that, in Chivalry you kind of feel like you take a couple of blows and you're pretty much dead, and here it did feel a little bit like, firstly, this was the game I was talking about when I said they were they trying to find the worst player they could. Like, oh my God, like he was getting hit left, right, and centre, and that was what revealed the slight, I guess, straying for me, which is that he was getting kind of like bang two-handed like kind of Nodachi slashes, to the shoulder constantly, left, right, and centre, and yet it kind of carried on, and it just felt a little bit. It again broke the immersion because it felt more like a typical kind of hack and slasher to me, and it felt slightly more reminiscent of, say, something like Rise, Son of Rome. I got that sort of vibe from it, but then combined with the whole, like in the same way as when they did Chivalry Deadliest Warrior and had all the kind of the Vikings, the samurai, whatever. It kind of felt almost like they'd taken that gimmick and put it on top of Rise, Son of Rome, which I just felt like the combat wasn't doing it for me in terms of that sense of realism and kind of brutalism and like you get hit and you are screwed sort of feel, which, it doesn't need to be as severe as something like Dark Souls, but I just felt like it was a little bit too normal hack and slash.
Yeah, there may have just been a demo thing, I guess.
Yeah, I was thinking that. It's because obviously
it's tough to
they
say.
want to get the character through it. They might have just done a thing which like takes off your health bar and you can just get through
exactly.
it. Like I've seen people do that with From Software did that last year with Dark Souls 3 and the Bloodborne DLC demos, where they took certain boss mechanics out so that press could actually get
Yeah,
through the game
they often
quicker,
did.
'cause
I
otherwise-
think Wildlands had the same thing. They'd taken away the health bars and stuff as well. I think it's understandable why they will have done it, because you don't want to suddenly have someone die and restart in the middle of your E3 demo. That wouldn't be great. But yeah, so I'm hoping that it comes together into something which feels a bit more.
Yeah.
There's a bit more gravitas to the combat when it is finally released,
definitely.
because it's got so much potential.
Yeah, I really liked the multiplayer demo last year, just like you said, and I think this single player kind of left me a little bit underwhelmed, but we'll see. The multiplayer still intrigues me.
Yeah, it felt like in the same way as some of the kind of like the class-based stuff on Shiv, each of the different kind of nations felt like it had its own kind of trade-offs. Like, yes, you can take speed with that, but if you're losing out on the armor, you will actually be a lot more vulnerable, and like the pace of certain weapons, yes, that takes a massive build-up to swing, but the damage output on it is just unreal. So like, again, I quite like the look of it. I just hope that it comes together well.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was what I took from it. I think it's because it seemed to be a bit slower and a bit more grounded in terms of its theme. That's why I picked up more.
They've got alpha and beta gameplays coming up, so fingers crossed we can actually get our hands on soon and see how it's starting to come together.
Is it on what platforms is the alpha on? Or beta?
I don't know about the alpha and beta. I'm assuming it will be cross-platform, because it's going to be released on all. I think when I remember them doing an early alpha sign-up, it was across all platforms.
Oh, okay, nice one.
Don't quote me on that. Then, before we come on to, I guess, the two kind of final flagship releases for them, they also then touched on Grow Up, which made me... That was the one that, again, gave me a little plug of guilt, because I've had Grow Home sitting on my PS4, actually, for a while, ever since it was in the kind of Sony, the monthly free PSN games, and... It just, for the few minutes I kind of got my hands on it originally when it first downloaded, it's just so cute, such a nice little feel to it, and just feels so different to anything I'd played before. It was like, it's got that really fun, kind of friendly world sort of feel that you get in some of the games like Spore. It was one of the things I liked about Spore, as opposed to some of its failings. But at the same time, it just something very, very different.
So I played Grow Home, and basically didn't put it down until I'd 100%ed it.
Wow.
And that takes like 4 or 5 hours, but it's joyful, it's super fun, it's very, very satisfying, it's so pretty.
It's like one of the old retro platforms, isn't it? You get kind of like Spyro sort of vibes off it when you're running around doing whatever you can, gliding around, holding
incredibly
a flower.
relaxing.
You never at any point feel stressed playing it.
So I'm super excited for Grow Up, but the only slight concern I have is that Grow Home was like really, really fun to do for those 5 hours, but that was probably about all you needed.
I was about to say it has a pleasure cap, but then I realised that was going to sound weird.
Yeah, unless they introduce some more mechanics. Like if this is going to be a whole world, and it's going to be, hey, maybe they're looking at like 15, 20 hours, they need enough substance to back that up for that length of time.
I didn't even realize that was on PC. Grow Home. I just looked in the Steam client, and
I played that on PC.
It's right there. It's $7.99. I might pick that up.
It's wonderful.
For 4 or 5 hours.
It's a wonderful little thing. But it's the most joyful 4 or 5 hours you'll have.
Then we came on to Watch Dogs 2, and again, I will say that similarly to Wildlands, for reasons which I'll explain, I felt cautiously optimistic, because actually, thinking back to the first Watch Dogs, for all the flack it got, and for all that, yes, there was the pure aesthetic of it didn't look like it did in the original reveals, but on a gameplay basis, when people got their hands on it, it just didn't feel like it had as much kind of depth and substance as some of its competitors. And the obvious comparison was GTA, where obviously there was so much to do in the world, living and breathing, so many kind of mini games and tasks, and it just felt huge. The thing that I think was interesting about the original Watch Dogs was that the world did have that in terms of the little details, but it didn't have it in terms of the kind of the life and vibrancy of the macro side of the world. Like, you had all the detail of you hacking someone's phone and you learn everything about that individual, but then when you drive down the street, you kind of feel like, what is there to really look at and see? Yes, it's all really cool and it's very well executed, but it's not as much to explore.
It's a similar problem across like all of it, like a lot of Ubisoft's open world games, is that they're really, really big. They're games that are almost like the sizes of oceans, but some of them just have about as much depth as a paddling pool. And Watch Dogs, the original, had sort of the same problem. Obviously, it's hard to compare Watch Dogs to GTA because GTA has like 5 times the budget that Watch Dogs ever had, and I've been years developing it. But
I think that's kind of the point I was about to make there. I think comparing Watch Dogs to GTA is probably less accurate than to say that in 2014 there were
Mm.
two Assassin's Creed games released, Unity and Watch Dogs, and neither one of them were
Yeah.
as good as everyone was hoping them to be, because honestly Watch Dogs did feel like a modern day Assassin's Creed, just with less focus on climbing tall buildings.
That's the point to me, that actually the point I was going to come on to really though is that the negatives are summed up to me by the fact that I played it for quite a few hours when it came out, got a fair depth into it, and then stopped and didn't come back. But actually, many things about the game I actually really liked. When I was actually in the midst of one of the main assaults or kind of breaking into one of the buildings, I loved it. I was so engaged. They could take so many different approaches to a situation. You could kind of stealth in, hack someone's phone, detonate a grenade on their back. However, weird it was that for some reason, like, why are there grenades attached to the central network? Like, you don't need your grenades to be hooked up to a central network. But that's, okay, fine. But those sides of the gameplay were actually really, really fun. And there were many things that it did really well. If anything, one of the things that I thought brought it down in terms of keeping me engaged was more we speak a lot about immersion, but it was the way the character kind of pulled into it. Not only was he one of the blandest characters in gaming, good old Aiden, but also he was this kind of like brooding vigilante sort of figure, and like, I'm out to save it and protect my family and blah, blah, blah. But then you're driving down the street, and whereas in GTA you're a mad criminal and it's fine if you kind of crash into someone and run them over and do whatever, because it's, I say fine, but it fits the character because they're kind of all supposed to be sociopaths. Yeah. But here you've got this guy who is claiming to be kind of out for the greater good, and that was really, really jarring. So actually, the thing that's quite interesting about the placement of the new game is you're almost like the video game equivalent of Anonymous. You're this group of renegade hackers, think they're really cool, and there's a sense of almost immaturity, but will do whatever it takes sort of feel, which I think will remove some of that jarring nature from it. And when you combine that with the the kind of bright beach sides of San Fran, which give a bit more energy to the world, it has got some potential there. Again, it's a newbie game. We don't know what's going to happen, and that's why I said cautiously optimistic. I think it will engage me in the same ways as the first Watch Dogs did, and maybe slightly more. Is it going to change my world? Probably not.
I think one of the problems I have with that demo is obviously, I think, granted, it seems to embrace more of its like silly side, which is what Watch Dogs should have, obviously, like it should have done in the first game, is embrace more of that, because there are some funny moments in that game mechanically. But looking at obviously the protagonists, obviously they seem to be quite young, and obviously they're like meant to be like hacking, like it's like this cool thing for them to suddenly be able to just randomly pick up assault rifles and start shooting at people and just start murdering people. It still causes me that dissonance.
There was a weird moment in the demo because they kind of go in and hack that, and they're just trying to get some files off a laptop, and he kind of sneaking through and he does some hacking and then he tases someone, and then suddenly the fight breaks out and he's just shooting everyone. You're like, well, you're only getting some files off a thing. If you were going to kill people, just go in and kill people off from the get-go. Like, there's a kind of a weird leap of, well, I guess I'm just shooting dudes now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you kind of almost wanted him to just like, okay, create a building-wide blackout or something and use the chaos to escape, rather than...
Yeah. Which it sounds like you will be able to do, like, from what they're saying. So, hey, maybe.
To me, it just looks like more Watch Dogs.
Which it is. Steep, guy. That was, again, one that I personally didn't really see coming. I've managed to avoid any. If there's been any pre-mention of that, I didn't see it. But it was really cool. Again, quite nice to see them embracing their roots, where they've just literally done as they said, we have a studio at the base of the Alps, and we kind of looked around us and went, wait a minute, we could so build a game based on this. And as someone who only kind of ever went skiing for the first time a couple of years ago, and kind of wished I'd done it as a kid because I found it far too terrifying for me to ever get good at it. I thought that was really cool. It took me back to the old days of SSX Tricky and those sorts of things, which were wicked back in the day, but now then placed into the classic Ubi approach of, oh, and by the way, it's a massive open world where you can just it's just no one saw that coming.
There were a lot of collectibles on that map screen.
I mean, it looks stunning. I can't see it being one that's going to necessarily be on my buy list, but I really like what they've done in terms of the idea. It was something that looked different in the context of a whole showcase across the board, across all the kind of main conferences, where there was a lot of things that looked quite similar. And this did look really cool.
Seems like quite a niche title.
Yeah, very much so.
The thing that we were just talking about, Watch Dogs, though, that kind of struck home with me for this one, because it's a gorgeous looking game, but I saw some fairly gruesome deaths along the way.
Oh God, when they hit the
Yes,
tree and then just
yeah.
kind of ragdoll down the mountain, you're thinking
Oh
like,
my God,
wow,
he's dead.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, exactly.
it's weird.
There's this weird thing where they just don't mention it. Just
Pan
don't-
away,
no.
pan away.
It's like, you got a silver medal. What about like those two guys
Yeah,
that
and you
died?
think when you see some of the stuff that people get up to, like it does almost slightly detract from in real life, like the whole adrenaline rush of these guys to do it for real, where you think like the whole reason why it's an adrenaline rush is because it is literally life or death, you know? Like if you're hurtling down, you're like, you know, a matter of feet off the ground, going 60 miles an hour in a wingsuit, like you're not in a car with a 5-star NCAP crash rating, you know. That's your skull with a little helmet on. So yeah, that was a little odd. But I thought particularly interesting was the replay feature they put in, the fact that you can like go back and have that kind of whole like literally free cam around yourself and any of the other competitors.
Oh, the
and
shot
stuff.
that they used for that too, of going off the side of the mountain there.
It's just beautiful. And the fact that it looks like you can kind of, yes, you can do kind of like, okay, cool, we're doing a snowboarding race, but you can also do ones that are like free. So it's like, okay, we're going down this mountain. Yeah, I'm going to paraglide it. How about you? People can take different routes down. That was just kind of really cool. Again, it felt like the thing that I really came away with, and I think I was going to say this earlier, was with the Ubi games, it's almost the more of these open world games they craft together, it starts to get to the point where you think like, in about 10 years time, there's probably not going to be Ubisoft games. There will just be, you just choose to opt into the Ubi game, where if you want to, you hop on a plane to the Alps and you can go skiing and stuff. Whereas then, if you want to, you can fly across to Bolivia and try and save, you know, and try and infiltrate, you know, a whole kind of narco state. And if you want to, you know, you go to San Fran and try and hack in. That, you know, it almost feels like they're creating like this, because they all kind of look the same in a way, you know, the same kind of look and feel, the same art style, the same kind of open world crafting, and you almost feel like the fundamental gameplay is very, very different. And in the same way that GTA had lots of little sub games, it's almost like Ubi's crafting standalone games that one day are going to turn into something that's the same.
I've just thought as well, if they do that, imagine the amount of bloody radio towers we have to go to.
To mention the fact that you get on your plane in San Francisco, you get on Abstergo Airlines in San Francisco and fly to the Alps, and like halfway across the flight, you're going to get interrupted by some guy getting stabbed in the throat, and
then your plane goes down, you land in Bolivia, and that's why you have to infiltrate the narco state.
Yes,
This is it. It's the Ubi game.
Ubisoft the game. There we go. Print it.
I also mentioned, as we kind of get to the end of the conference, they brought out basically everyone on stage at the end and had Yves Guillemot do like a little speech about how Ubisoft was passionate about games, and there was a real feeling of like this potential hostile takeover hanging over them, this Vivendi deal that like, hey, our sister company's just been taken over, and hey, maybe we might be, and we're all really nice and we're very passionate, and thanks, help. So it was a little bit
Send
scary,
help.
but I guess it was nice to see them make the gesture
Yeah.
at least.
Poor guys.
Especially, like you say, after they had quite a lot of those kind of nice kind of indie style features within the show.
Not too much of a cringy conference as well by Ubisoft
No,
standards.
not in the slightest actually. And like you say, it was actually credit
The
to
opening.
Aisha's delivery. Yes, the Just Dance intro, bit weird, but hey, it was all in good fun. And you know, you've got a live audience there as well. You need to be entertaining.
And to be fair to Ubisoft, we rag on them for open world games and radio towers and that kind of thing, but they do have a house style, and they do it
Yeah.
well.
Mm.
I mean, really,
Oh, yeah.
the only game I can think of that's done the Ubisoft style as good as, if not better than Ubisoft,
Mad
has
Max.
been Mad Max. Yeah,
Yeah, it was Assassin's Creed in the wasteland, wasn't it? Literally,
pretty much.
they even kept in the climbable towers, and oh man,
Yeah, I'm not knocking people who like this kind of games at all. I think it's just because I do play quite a lot of games myself, so there's only so much of a certain formula I can take before it.
I agree. I think it's the reason why I have a lot of those sorts of games where I haven't completed them, because I get the same thing. I'll start playing one, and then another one comes out, and I think, oh, well, I'll play that then, because it's going to be like playing the same game but with a new
Yeah.
environment.
For sure.
At the same time, though, I can't say anything because I played Bloodborne like 8 times. I played Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3.
Everyone
like,
has their jam, man.
twice already.
Everyone has their jam.
That said, like when a Ubisoft game clicks, I do appreciate how much stuff there is, like however shallow it can be sometimes. You know, when I 100%ed Far Cry 4, and just having all that stuff to do, even the minor stuff, it just gives me another reason to keep exploring that world.
Exactly,
and
like you say, it applies to non-Ubi games. Far Cry, like Fallout, is again a perfect example. I mean, look at actually one of the things that was most odd about Dragon Age Inquisition, for example, was you had these massive sprawling map environments where you almost felt obliged to go and just tick all the boxes on your map, and I was like, am I playing an Ubi game here? So yeah, it was. It has its pluses and minuses.
And I'm really not one to talk either, because I have finished every Assassin's Creed game at least twice, except for Syndicate, which is on the list to go again at some point.